The massive space station Concordia floated in the void between three dying stars. Inside the command center, representatives from 12 different alien species gathered around a holographic display showing a planet consumed by purple flames. The Krellian ambassador's tentacles drooped in defeat as he spoke through his translator. The void plague has spread to another system. That makes 73 worlds lost in just 6 months. Our science teams have found no cure, no way to stop it. Commander Zoix of the Altarian fleet tapped his crystalline fingers against the table. My people have decided. We are evacuating all our colonies near the infected zones. The plague consumes everything, organic matter, technology, even the atmosphere itself. Fighting it is pointless. One by one, the other species agreed. The insectoid Thracery, the energy-based Luminos, the aquatic Neptari, all announced their withdrawal from the containment efforts. Their ships would retreat to safe space, abandoning billions of inhabitants in the plague zones to their fate. Sarah Chun, the human representative, remained silent through the discussion. She was young for such a position, only 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her aide, Marcus Torres, leaned close to whisper updates from Earth government. The other species barely noticed the humans. Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 20 years ago, making them infants in galactic terms. So, it is decided, announced the Vorthan Prime Minister, his 4 arms gesturing formally. All coalition forces will withdraw beyond the Nexus line. We will establish a quarantine zone and prevent any ships from entering or leaving the infected regions. What about the people still alive in those systems? Sarah finally spoke, her voice cutting through the resignation in the room. The Krellian ambassador's many eyes focused on her. There is nothing we can do. The plague kills within days of exposure. No shields can stop it. No medicine can cure it. We must save what we can by keeping it contained. You're abandoning 30 billion sentient beings, Sarah stated flatly. Better than losing the entire galaxy, the Altarian commander replied. Your species is young, human. You don't understand the mathematics of survival. Sometimes you must sacrifice the few to save the many. Sarah stood up, her hands flat on the table. Earth's position is different. We won't abandon those people. The room erupted in disbelief. Several translators struggled to convey the mix of shock, amusement, and concern from the various species. You have 17 ships, the Vorthan Prime Minister said slowly, as if explaining to a child. The plague has destroyed armadas of thousands. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. If we cannot stop it, how can you? We'll figure it out, Sarah said simply. That's what humans do. The Luminos representative flickered, their energy form pulsing with what might have been laughter. Figure it out? This is not some engineering problem, human. This is an extinction-level threat that has defeated the greatest minds of the galaxy. Marcus handed Sarah a tablet. She glanced at it and nodded. Earth's government has authorized me to formally announce our withdrawal from the Coalition Evacuation Protocol. Any human ships in the area will remain to assist evacuation and research efforts. This is madness, Commander Zoix said. I have studied your species. You are reckless, emotional, and prone to impossible optimism. These traits will not save you from the void plague. Maybe not, Sarah admitted, but we're still going to try. The meeting dissolved into chaos as representatives argued and pleaded. Some tried to convince the humans to see reason. Others simply shook their heads at humanity's foolishness. Within hours, the Great Coalition fleet began its withdrawal, thousands of ships from dozens of species streaming away from the plague zones. On the observation deck of the human frigate Jerusalem, Captain Lisa Park watched the Allied ships disappear into hyperspace. Her crew of 300 humans remained at their posts, along with 16 other Earth vessels scattered throughout the infected regions. Ma'am, her science officer reported, we're receiving distress signals from 11 planets in this system alone. The evacuation ships left millions behind. Then, we'd better get to work, Captain Park replied. Signal the other human ships. Tell them we're implementing Emergency Protocol 7. Ma'am, that protocol is theoretical at best. We've never attempted anything on this scale. Park smiled grimly. First time for everything, Lieutenant. That's the human way. As the last Coalition ship vanished into the safety of deep space, 17 small human vessels turned toward the purple burning worlds. They were outnumbered, outgunned by the plague, and facing odds that had defeated civilizations millions of years older than Earth. But they were human, and humans had a disturbing habit of doing the impossible when everyone else said it couldn't be done. The Void Plague had consumed entire star systems, defeated the greatest powers in the galaxy, and sent ancient civilizations fleeing in terror. It was about to learn what happened when humanity decided to stand and fight. In her quarters aboard the Jerusalem, Captain Park opened a secure channel to Earth. The face of Admiral Rebecca Nash appeared on the screen, grave but determined. "The Coalition has abandoned the field, Admiral. We're on our own." "Understood, Captain. You have full authority to implement any measures necessary. Earth stands behind you." "The odds are impossible, ma'am. The science teams say we have maybe a 2% chance of finding a solution before the plague reaches inhabited human space." Admiral Nash smiled. 2%? Hell, Captain, those are better odds than we had against climate change, and we beat that. You have your orders." The channel closed, and Captain Park returned to the bridge. Outside the viewports, the Purple Plague continued its relentless advance, consuming a moon in real time. Her crew watched in horrified fascination as the celestial body dissolved like sugar in acid. "All right, people," Park announced. "The galaxy's given up, gone home to hide under their beds. But we're humans. We don't know how to quit, and we're too stupid to know when we're beat. So let's do what we do best. Let's do the impossible." The crew cheered, not because they believed they would succeed, but because they were human, and attempting the impossible was encoded in their DNA. As their small ships raced towards certain death, facing a plague that had defeated the combined might of the galaxy, they carried with them humanity's greatest weapon, the absolute refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. The galaxy watched from afar, expecting to witness humanity's extinction. Instead, they were about to witness something far more terrifying, humans with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Dr. Yuki Tanaka floated in zero gravity inside the containment lab of the research vessel Pioneer. Through the reinforced transparent aluminum, she studied samples of the Void Plague with fascination rather than fear. Her team of 12 scientists had been working nonstop for 48 hours since the Coalition forces abandoned them. "It's not a virus," she announced to her exhausted team. "Not bacteria, not any form of life as we understand it. It's something else entirely." "What then?" asked Dr. James Okafor, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. "Some kind of nanotechnology?" Yuki shook her head, pushing off from the wall to float closer to the containment unit. "Look at the molecular structure. It doesn't just destroy matter, it converts it, changes it into more of itself, like a chain reaction at the quantum level." On the bridge of the Jerusalem, Captain Park received updates from all 17 human ships. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. 3 more worlds had fallen to the plague in the last day alone. Refugee ships streamed toward the human vessels, desperate for any hope of escape. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Krellian colony ship Eternal Hope," the communications officer reported. "They're requesting immediate assistance. Their engines have failed, and the plague is only 2 days away from their position." "How many souls on board?" 42,000, Mom. Mostly families with children." Park didn't hesitate. "Alter course to intercept. Tell the Athens and the Mumbai to assist. We're not leaving anyone behind." Her first officer, Commander Jake Sullivan, frowned at the tactical display. "Captain, that will put us dangerously close to the plague front. If we can't repair their engines in time, then we'll take their people aboard our ships," Park replied. "Cram them in the cargo holds if we have to." Meanwhile, on the surface of Kepler 442b, a world just days away from plague contact, human emergency teams worked frantically to evacuate the population. The native Zelani were silicon-based life forms who had given up hope when the Coalition abandoned them. They watched in amazement as humans refused to accept defeat. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force coordinated the evacuation effort from the planetary capital. Her translator struggled to convey the urgency in her voice to the Zelani elder before her. "I need your people to start moving to the spaceport now. We have 17 transport shuttles running continuous flights to the cargo ships in orbit." "But there are 6 million of us," the elder replied, his crystalline form shimmering with despair. "Your ships cannot possibly carry us all." "Watch us," Maria said firmly. We'll double-stack the cargo holds, use the maintenance shafts, strap people to the exterior hull if we have to. But nobody gets left behind on my watch. The human ships, designed to carry thousands, began taking on tens of thousands. Life support systems strained to the breaking point. Food and water were rationed to emergency levels. Crew members gave up their quarters, their recreational spaces, every spare centimeter to refugee families. Back on the Pioneer, Dr. Tanaka made a startling discovery. She burst into the ship's communication center, still wearing her containment suit. I need a priority channel to all human vessels immediately. The communications tech looked startled, but complied. Within minutes, Yuki's face appeared on screens throughout the human fleet. I found something, she announced breathlessly. The plague isn't random. It follows patterns, like a computer virus executing code. And I think it might be artificial. Captain Park leaned forward in her command chair. Artificial? You mean someone created this thing? I can't be certain, but the mathematical precision of its consumption patterns suggests design rather than evolution. More importantly, I've discovered that certain elements seem to slow its progress. Specifically, radioactive isotopes. The plague takes longer to convert irradiated matter. How much longer? Asked Captain Ahmad from Mumbai. In our tests, materials exposed to gamma radiation took 6 times longer to be consumed. It's not a cure, but it might buy us time. The human fleet immediately went to work. Every spare rad source was deployed. Nuclear reactors were pushed to maximum output. Teams in radiation suits began treating the hulls of refugee ships, planetary shields, even entire city blocks with controlled radiation exposure. The galaxy watched in disbelief. The Altarian command received reports of humans voluntarily exposing themselves to dangerous radiation levels to buy mere hours of additional time. The Vorthan Prime Minister reviewed footage of human crews manually installing radioactive plating on alien refugee ships, knowing it would likely shorten their own lives. They're insane, he murmured to his advisors. They're killing themselves slowly to delay the inevitable by days. But those days mattered. In that time, another 8 million lives were evacuated from plague zones. Human ships, packed far beyond their safety limits, limped towards safe space. Some didn't make it. The cargo vessel New Mumbai suffered a catastrophic life support failure, but not before transferring all 60,000 refugees to other ships, her crew working until the last moment. On the edge of the plague zone, something unprecedented happened. A small human survey ship, the Darwin, sent an emergency broadcast. Captain Elena Vasquez's voice crackled across the void. This is Darwin to all ships. We've done something. My science team exposed a plague sample to a concentrated burst of exotic particles from our experimental drive core. The plague had stopped spreading. Repeat, the sample stopped spreading. Every human ship with an experimental system began replicating the Darwin's accident. Most failed. Some ships were lost in the attempts, their crews volunteering for the dangerous experiments. But slowly patterns emerged. Certain combinations of radiation and exotic particles could halt the plague's advance, at least temporarily. Dr. Tanaka worked furiously to understand why. The answer, when it came, was both brilliant and terrifying. The plague is a weapon, she announced to the gathered human captains via secure channel. An ancient weapon designed to cleanse entire galaxies. But weapons have safeguards, ways to prevent them from destroying their creators. We've been accidentally triggering those safeguards. So how do we stop it permanently? Captain Park asked. We need to find the source, the original deployment point. If this is artificial, there might be a way to shut it down. The first plague appearance was in the Sagittarius Arm. Coordinates I'm sending now, Captain Vasquez reported. But that entire region is deep in the plague zone. It's a suicide mission. Then we asked for volunteers, Park said simply. Every single human ship volunteered. The coalition observers, watching from safe space, reported back to their governments with a mixture of awe and horror. The humans were not retreating. Instead, they were planning to fly directly into the heart of the plague zone, into certain death, on the slim chance they might find a way to stop it. Commander ZYX of the Altarian fleet studied the tactical projections. Even if they find the source, they won't survive long enough to do anything about it. The radiation levels alone will kill them in hours. His aide brought up bioscan data from the human ships. Many crew members were already showing signs of radiation poisoning from their makeshift shielding efforts. They had to know they were dying, yet they continued working. "Sir," the aide said quietly, "the humans have requested any historical data we have about the Sagittarius arm from before the plague. They're specifically asking about ancient ruins or artificial structures. Why will we help them commit suicide? Because, sir, they've already saved 12 million lives that we abandoned. And they're not asking us to risk anything, just to share information." Slowly, reluctantly, the coalition species began transmitting data to the human fleet. Ancient star charts, archaeological surveys, legends, and myths about the region. The humans received it all with gratitude, adding it to their desperate search for answers. On the Jerusalem, Captain Park addressed her crew. Half of them were already showing radiation burns from their work with the refugees. They knew what she was about to ask. "I won't order anyone on this mission. We're going into the heart of hell itself, and the chances of coming back are slim to none. But if there's even a chance we can stop this thing, save the billions still in its path." She didn't need to finish. Every hand on the ship volunteered. 17 human ships, battered and overcrowded, their crews already dying from radiation exposure, turned toward the plague's heart. They accelerated to maximum speed, racing against time and their own failing bodies. The galaxy held its breath. The ancient races, who had seen empires rise and fall over millions of years, watched something they had never witnessed before, a species barely out of its stellar cradle, throwing itself into certain death not for glory or conquest, but for the simple chance to save strangers who weren't even their own kind. The Krellian ambassador, safe in coalition space, found himself speaking a prayer he hadn't uttered in decades. It was a prayer for the impossible, for the young species that refused to accept the inevitable. As the human fleet plunged into the purple hell of the plague zone, their final transmissions were not of fear or regret. They were status reports, scientific data, and messages of hope to the refugees they had saved. They were the words of a species that had looked at impossible odds and responded with the most human phrase in any language: "We'll handle it." The Jerusalem shuddered as it pushed through the plague zone's outer boundary. Purple energy crackled across the hull like living lightning, and the radiation alarm screamed warnings that Captain Park had ordered muted hours ago. There was no point in listening to what they already knew. They were flying through death itself. Hull integrity at 70% and falling, Commander Sullivan reported, his voice steady despite the blood trickling from his nose, an early sign of severe radiation poisoning. "The ablative armor is buying us time, but not much." Through the viewports, space itself seemed diseased. Purple veins of plague energy stretched between dying stars, and debris fields of consumed worlds floated like cosmic graveyards. The 17 human ships pressed forward in tight formation, sharing what little shielding they could generate between them. Dr. Tanaka worked in the medical bay, now converted into a makeshift research center. Half her team was too sick to stand, but they continued analyzing data from their tablets while lying on gurneys. She herself could barely see through her left eye, the radiation having damaged her optical nerves. "Captain, I'm detecting something," she called over the intercom. Massive energy readings ahead, but they're different from the plague's signature. "It's older." Park gripped her command chair as another wave of nausea hit her. "Can you be more specific, Doctor?" "The pattern suggests artificial construction, something built to last millions of years." Coordinates coming to your screen now. On the tactical display, a structure materialized from the plague fog. It was enormous, a sphere of unknown metal the size of a small moon, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The plague swirled around it, but didn't touch it like water flowing around a stone. "My God," whispered the navigation officer. "It's a station, an ancient station." The human fleet approached cautiously. 3 ships, the Cairo, the Stockholm, and the Beijing, had already gone dark, their crews succumbing to radiation poisoning. The remaining 14 vessels were operating with skeleton crews, everyone else too sick to work. "Darwin to Jerusalem." Captain Vasquez's weak voice came through. "We're detecting an energy field around the station. It's repelling the plague. If we can get inside that field." "All ships, emergency approach vector," Park ordered. "Get inside that field now." The human vessels, leaking radiation and trailing debris, limped toward the ancient station. As they crossed into its protective field, the purple plague energy flickered and died against an invisible barrier. For the first time in days, the radiation alarms decreased slightly. "We're not dying quite as fast," Dr. Okafor observed with gallows humor from his bed in the Pioneer's medical bay. "That's something." The station's surface was covered in symbols that no human database could translate. But as the Jerusalem drew closer, something extraordinary happened. The symbols began to shift and change, reforming into recognizable patterns. It's learning our language," the communications officer said in amazement. "The station is scanning our computers and adapting." Words formed on the station's surface in a dozen human languages. "Plague containment facility. Authorization required." "This is it," Dr. Tanaka said, forcing herself to stand despite her body's protests. "This station, it's not just old. It's the control center for the plague itself." Captain Park made a decision that would have seemed insane to any other species. "Prepare a boarding party. We're going inside." "Captain, we don't have anyone healthy enough," Sullivan began. "I'll lead it myself," Park interrupted. "Dr. Tanaka, you're with me. Anyone else who can still walk and wants to volunteer." 23 humans, all dying from radiation poisoning, suited up for the expedition. They knew it was likely a one-way trip, but not one hesitated. As their shuttle approached the station's docking port, ancient mechanisms activated, drawing them inside. The interior was a maze of corridors that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Gravity shifted and flowed like water. The walls displayed holographic interfaces that responded to touch, showing star maps spanning millions of years. "Look at this, Dr." Tanaka breathed, studying a central display. The plague wasn't a weapon. It was a cleanup system. The race that built this, they're long gone, but they created the plague to prevent their technology from falling into the wrong hands. It was supposed to activate only around their abandoned worlds, but something went wrong. The safeguards failed, and it spread beyond its boundaries. "So how do we stop it?" Park asked, leaning heavily against a wall as another wave of weakness hit her. Tanaka's fingers flew across the holographic interface despite the trembling in her hands. "There's a shutdown protocol, but it requires biological authorization from the creators. They've been extinct for eons, so that's impossible unless..." She turned to Park with a wild look in her eyes. "Captain, the station's been learning from us. It's adapted to our language, our technology. What if we can make it recognize us as authorized users?" "That's insane," Park said. Then she grinned weakly. "So perfectly human. Do it." The next hours were a blur of desperate activity. The human team worked to understand the station's systems while their bodies failed around them. 3 crew members collapsed and didn't get up. Others continued, working even as their vision blurred, and their hands shook uncontrollably. Outside, the remaining human ships formed a protective circle around the station, using their own hulls to shield it from plague energy that tried to break through. The Moscow sacrificed itself entirely, ramming a massive plague tendril that threatened to breach the station's field. Its crew's last transmission was a defiant cry. For Earth, for the galaxy, for everyone. Dr. Tanaka finally found what she was looking for, the biological authentication system. It required a living sample from an authorized species. The creators were gone, but the system could be recalibrated. "I need to introduce human DNA into the system," she explained to the others. "Make it recognize us as the inheritors of this responsibility. But the process, it'll kill whoever does it. The energy requirements will burn out the human nervous system in seconds." Before anyone could volunteer, she pressed her hand against the interface. "Yuki, no," Park shouted, but it was too late. Energy surged through Dr. Tanaka's body. She screamed as her DNA was analyzed, broken down, and integrated into the station's ancient systems. Her team could only watch as she literally burned from the inside out, her sacrifice uploading humanity into the station's authorization protocols. With her dying breath, Yuki Tanaka whispered, "Shut down, authorized." The change was immediate and galaxy-spanning. The purple plague, which had consumed entire systems, suddenly stopped. Like a wave in reverse, it began to retreat, dissolving back into the quantum foam from which it came. Worlds that had been moments from destruction watched in awe as the purple death simply evaporated. On the Coalition observation post, pandemonium erupted. Commander Zyax stared at his instruments in disbelief. It's not possible. The plague is retreating, disappearing. How? The answer came in a weak transmission from the Jerusalem. Captain Park, now barely able to stand, managed to activate the communication system. This is Captain Lisa Park of the Earth ship Jerusalem to all Coalition forces. The plague has been neutralized. I repeat, the plague has been neutralized. Request immediate medical assistance for surviving human personnel. Captain, this is Commander Zyax. How many of your people survived? Park looked around at her dying crew, did a quick mental count of the reports from other ships. Of the approximately 5,000 humans who entered the plague zone, maybe 300 are still alive. Most won't last another day without treatment. The Coalition fleet, which had fled in the face of danger, now raced back to help those who had stayed. Medical ships from a dozen species converged on the human vessels, desperate to save whoever they could. As alien medical teams boarded the Jerusalem, they found scenes that would be remembered for millennia. Human crew members had died at their posts, having worked until their bodies simply gave out. In the cargo holds, refugees of multiple species huddled together, kept alive by human engineers who had manually maintained life support even as radiation ate away at their cells. Captain Park was carried to the medical ship on a stretcher. As Krellian doctors worked to save her life, she managed to ask, "The refugees, did they all make it?" "Yes," the lead doctor assured her, his tentacles gentle as they applied healing compounds. "Every one of the 40 million beings your people evacuated survived. You saved them all." Park smiled and closed her eyes. "Good. That's what humans do." In the following days, as the galaxy struggled to comprehend what had happened, the statistics became clear. 17 human ships had entered the plague zone. 6 were completely lost with all hands. The surviving 11 ships had suffered 94% casualties. But they had stopped a plague that would have consumed the entire galaxy. The ancient station, now under Coalition control, revealed its secrets. The plague had been a mistake, an automated system that outlived its creators and malfunctioned. It had taken a species barely into space, considered primitive by galactic standards, to fix what older civilizations had deemed impossible. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery came from the station's records. In its millions of years of operation, it had observed countless species. The creators had programmed it to evaluate and judge civilizations based on their responses to crisis. When the human data was analyzed, the station's assessment was broadcast across the galaxy in the creator's ancient script, translated now for all to see. Species designated human, evaluation complete. Technological rating, primitive. Military rating, minimal. Survival probability when faced with class Omega threat, 0.002%. Actual result, threat neutralized. Species classification, remarkable. Recommended action, protect and nurture. This species displays anomalous problem-solving capabilities and sacrificial behavior patterns that defy predictive models. They are what we hoped we would become. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. When faced with the impossible, when all hope was lost, when every rational species had given up, there was one young race who would look at certain death and say those 3 impossible words, "We'll handle it." And somehow against all odds they did. The Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime had never seen such a gathering. Representatives from every known species filled the vast amphitheater. There forms a rainbow of evolution's diversity. At the center podium stood Sarah Chun, humanity's representative, but she was no longer the young diplomat who had defied the Coalition months ago. Her hair had gone partially gray, and she walked with a cane, lasting effects of radiation exposure from her time, coordinating rescue efforts. The Vorthan Prime Minister called the assembly to order, his 4 arms raised for silence. "We gather today to discuss the aftermath of the Void Plague crisis and humanity's role in its resolution." The floor recognizes Ambassador Chun of Earth. Seraph stood slowly, steadying herself on the podium. When she spoke, her voice carried across the chamber with quiet authority. "Thank you, Prime Minister. 3 months ago, the combined fleets of the galaxy fled from the Void Plague. Today, that plague is gone, and 40 million refugees of various species are alive because humans stayed behind. We lost 4,712 souls in that effort. I named them heroes, everyone. A murmur rippled through the assembly. The number was tiny by galactic standards. Some species lost more citizens to accidents in a typical year. But the percentage was staggering. Nearly 95% of the humans who had entered the plague zone had died. Commander Zoix of the Altarian fleet stood, his crystalline form catching the light. Ambassador Chun, the galaxy owes humanity a debt that cannot be repaid. But there are questions that must be answered. How did your species, with technology decades behind ours, accomplish what we deemed impossible? Sarah smiled sadly. You want to know our secret? There isn't one. We're not stronger than you, not smarter, certainly not more advanced. But we are stubborn. When you saw impossibility, we saw improbability. When you calculated the odds of survival, we calculated the lives we could save. That's the difference. The Lumino's representative flickered, their energy form pulsing with curiosity. But surely you must have known the mission was suicide. Your people were already dying from radiation before they even reached the plague's source. Yes, they knew, Sarah confirmed. Captain Park knew. Dr. Tanaka knew. Every volunteer knew. But here's what you don't understand about humans. We don't need to survive to win. We just need to make sure someone does. From the Earth delegation, Marcus Torres activated a holographic display. Images of the human crews appeared, not official portraits, but candid shots. Captain Park laughing with her bridge crew. Dr. Tanaka teaching a class of mixed-species children about genetics. Engineers sharing meals with Krellian refugees in overcrowded cargo holds. These weren't special forces or chosen heroes, Sarah continued. They were explorers, scientists, cargo haulers. Ordinary people who did extraordinary things because someone had to. The Nepturi ambassador rose from their aquatic chamber. The station's records indicate that Dr. Tanaka's sacrifice was crucial. She literally burned out her nervous system to integrate humanity into the control protocols. How does your species produce individuals capable of such acts? Sarah was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Every human child learns stories of sacrifice. Real ones. The firefighter who runs into a burning building. The parent who shields their child from danger. The soldier who jumps on a grenade to save their squad. We call them heroes, but the truth is, most humans like to believe they would do the same if needed. Dr. Tanaka proved she would. But the radiation pressed the Thackeray representative, their insectoid features clicking with agitation. Your people continued working even as their bodies failed. Our medical teams reported humans literally dying at their posts rather than abandoning their duties. Have you ever heard of Chernobyl? Sarah asked. When the assembly indicated confusion, she explained. A nuclear disaster on Earth, long before we reached space. Hundreds of humans ran toward a melting reactor core, knowing the radiation would kill them, because someone had to contain it. They saved millions of lives. We call them the liquidators, heroes who cleaned up a mess that would have poisoned half a continent. She gestured to the images still floating above the assembly. Captain Park and her crews were our liquidators among the stars. They saw a mess that threatened the galaxy, and they cleaned it up. The cost was just acceptable to them. The Krellian ambassador, who had been silent until now, raised several tentacles. My people were among those evacuated by your ships. My own offspring were on the Eternal Hope when its engines failed. Your crews gave up their radiation shielding to protect our children, knowing it would hasten their own deaths. I must ask why. They weren't your species. You owed us nothing. Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Because they were children. Because they were scared. Because they needed help. And we were there. Is that so hard to understand? From many species in the assembly, it genuinely was. The cold logic of survival that governed most galactic civilizations said you protected your own first, others if resources allowed. The human approach, everyone or no one, defied their understanding. The Altarian commander spoke again. The galaxy wishes to honor your fallen. We propose a memorial station at the site where the plague was stopped, and formal recognition of humanity as a protector species, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. We appreciate the honor, Sarah replied. But if you want to truly honor our dead, then learn from them. Next time the galaxy faces a crisis, don't calculate the odds of success. Calculate the cost of failure. Don't ask if it's possible. Ask if it's necessary. The assembly hall fell silent as her words sank in. Then, something unprecedented happened. The Vorthan Prime Minister, leader of one of the oldest and proudest species in the galaxy, bowed to the human delegation. One by one, every other representative followed suit, tentacles, energy fields, crystalline forms, all bent in respect to the young species that had taught them an ancient lesson. Later, in a private meeting room, Sarah met with the survivors of the human fleet. Only 287 had recovered enough to attend, many still bearing the marks of their ordeal. Captain Park was there, her once strong frame now frail, but her spirit undimmed. "They want to make us heroes," Park said with a wry smile. "Build monuments, write songs. The Krellians are already composing an epic poem about the saviors from Earth." "How do you feel about that?" Sarah asked. Park shrugged. "We didn't do it for glory. We did it because—" She paused, searching for words. "Because when everyone else gave up, someone had to try. Isn't that what humans always do? We're the idiots who run toward danger when everyone else runs away. Idiots who save the galaxy." Marcus Torres added from his wheelchair, his body still recovering from radiation damage. "The Coalition wants to study us," Sarah informed them. "Figure out what makes humans capable of what they call irrational heroism. They want to understand how we override self-preservation so completely." The survivors laughed, a sound both bitter and warm. "Good luck with that," someone called out. "We don't even understand it ourselves." But perhaps that was the point. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't superior technology or brilliant strategy. It was something far simpler and infinitely more complex: the willingness to bet everything on the impossible chance of saving others. Over the following months, changes rippled across galactic society. The Coalition adopted new protocols, ones that emphasized protection of all lives over pure survival mathematics. Species that had fled the plague began training emergency response teams modeled after human principles. "No one left behind" became more than a human motto. It became a galactic aspiration. The ancient station where Dr. Tanaka had died was transformed into a research center and memorial. Her sacrifice had not only stopped the plague, but had given the galaxy access to technology millions of years more advanced than anything they had known. The station recognized humanity as its inheritors, sharing secrets that would have taken millennia to discover otherwise. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. No longer were they seen as primitive newcomers, barely worth noticing. They were the species that stayed when everyone else fled. The ones who looked at certain death and asked, "How can we help?" On Earth, children learned new stories, not just of ancient heroes who had saved their own world, but of Captain Lisa Park, who flew into hell to save strangers, of Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who burned herself out to stop an ancient plague, of thousands who had died so millions could live. And in the vast reaches of space, when new crises arose, and they always did, the call would go out across the stars. Most species would calculate odds, assess risks, and make logical decisions. But everyone knew that when things looked truly impossible, when hope itself seemed lost, one young species would answer the call with 3 simple words that had saved the galaxy: "We'll handle it." Because that's what humans do. 5 years had passed since the Void Plague crisis, and the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. On the bridge of the starship New Horizons, Captain Elena Vasquez, one of the few plague survivors still serving in space, watched her mixed-species crew work in harmony. Her first officer was Krellian, her chief engineer Altarian, and her science team included members from 8 different worlds. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal," announced Lieutenant Chun, a relative of the famous ambassador Sarah Chun. "It's coming from the Magellanic Cloud. The signal is ancient, but it just activated." Vasquez studied the data scrolling across her screen. "How ancient are we talking?" "The carrier waves suggest technology at least 3 million years old. But, Captain, there's something else. The signal contains a warning about another automated system, something called the entropy engine." The bridge fell silent. Everyone remembered what had happened with the last ancient automated system. "Send a priority alert to the Galactic Council," Vasquez ordered, "and signal all ships in the sector. If this is another plague-level threat, Within hours, the Allied fleet assembled, a massive armada of hundreds of ships from dozens of species. But at its heart was something new, the Humanity Protocol vessels. These were mixed-crew ships specifically designed for what the galaxy now called impossible missions. When everyone else had to turn back, these ships, inspired by human philosophy, would continue forward. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. This time, the atmosphere was different. Instead of fear and resignation, there was determination. The Vorthan Prime Minister addressed the assembly with 4 arms spread wide. 5 years ago, we fled from the Void Plague, leaving humanity to face it alone. We will not repeat that mistake. Whatever this entropy engine is, we face it together. Commander ZYX, now Admiral ZYX, presented the tactical analysis. The signal originates from a stellar engineering project of impossible scale. Someone built a device around an entire galaxy cluster, and it's beginning to activate. Based on the mathematics, it appears designed to accelerate entropy itself, to age the universe to heat death in a matter of years rather than billions of years. Gasps echoed through the chamber. This wasn't just a threat to worlds or species. It was a threat to existence itself. The engineering required is beyond anything we can comprehend, the Lumino's representative added. Whoever built this had technology that makes us look like we're still banging rocks together. How can we possibly stop it? Sarah Chun, now Director of Interspecies Crisis Response, stood slowly. The radiation damage had aged her beyond her years, but her voice was strong. The same way we stopped the plague, by refusing to accept that we can't. But Ambassador Chun, the Nepturi delegate, protested. Last time you had hundreds of human volunteers willing to die. Surely you cannot ask that sacrifice again. Sarah smiled. I don't have to ask. We already have 12,000 volunteers from Earth. But more importantly, we have something we didn't have last time. She gestured around the chamber. We have all of you. The first Thackeray to step forward was Kex, whose hive had been saved by human evacuation ships. My people volunteer. We learned from humanity that survival without honor is meaningless. If the humans go, we go. The Krellians were next, their ambassadors' tentacles raised high. Our children live because humans died for them. We stand with Earth. One by one, every species in the assembly pledged ships and crews. The galaxy had learned humanity's most important lesson. Some things were worth dying for. The Allied fleet that assembled was unlike anything in galactic history. 3,000 ships, crewed not by individual species, but by mixed teams. Humans serve alongside aliens who had once fled, teaching them not just tactics, but philosophy. How to hope when logic said despair. How to try when probability said failure. As they approached the entropy engine, its scale became horrifyingly clear. It wasn't built around a galaxy cluster. It was a galaxy cluster, billions of stars rewired into a machine designed to unravel reality itself. Ancient warnings in 1,000 dead languages flickered across their screens, all saying the same thing. Do not interfere. The end is calculated. The end is certain. On the new horizons, Captain Vasquez addressed the Allied fleet. Well, there it is. A machine the size of 1 billion stars telling us the universe is doomed. Anyone want to leave? The response was immediate and unanimous. 3,000 ships signaling readiness to proceed. Dr. Tvara, a Krellian scientist who had studied under human physicists, made a discovery. Captain, the engine operates on similar principles to the plague. It's automated, following programmed instructions. But the scale is so vast that shutting it down would require simultaneously accessing millions of control nodes across the cluster. So we need to be in millions of places at once, Vasquez mused. That's impossible. Her human navigation officer grinned. Captain, since when has impossible stopped us? What followed was the most audacious plan in galactic history. If they couldn't be in millions of places at once, they would create millions of chances. Using technology derived from the plague control station, they would fragment their ships into quantum probability clouds, existing in multiple locations simultaneously. It would likely kill everyone involved, but it might work. The Altarian engineers called it insane. The Vorthan physicists said it violated 12 fundamental laws of physics. The humans started calculating how to do it anyway, and their attitude was infectious. Soon, scientists from every species were working together, throwing out conventional wisdom and asking, but what if we tried this? Sarah Chan watched from Earth as the fleet prepared for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. But something beautiful was happening. The volunteers weren't just accepting death. They were celebrating the chance to try. Ships painted messages on their hulls. Crews from different species shared their cultural traditions. The galaxy wasn't going gently into that good night. The quantum fragmentation began. Ships dissolved into probability clouds, their crews experiencing existence across multiple realities. The strain was immediate and terrible. Minds not meant to exist in multiple states began to fracture. But they pressed on, reaching for control nodes across the impossible expanse of the entropy engine. On the new horizons, existing in 17 different locations simultaneously, Captain Vasquez felt her consciousness splitting. In one reality, she was entering codes into an ancient console. In another, she was fighting off automated defenses. In a third, she was already dead. But in all of them, she kept working. "Status report," she called out, her voice echoing across dimensions. 40% of nodes accessed. Someone, or multiple someones, replied. "But, Captain, we're losing cohesion. The probability matrices are collapsing." This was the moment. The moment when logic said to stop, when survival instinct screamed retreat, when every rational thought demanded surrender. "All ships, this is Vasquez. Remember why we're here. Remember who we're saving. Remember that humans taught the galaxy a truth, that trying and failing is better than not trying at all. Hold the line." Across the quantum divide, 3,000 ships and their mixed crews held on. Humans and Krellians died together. Altarians and Thrakkery burned out their consciousness accessing ancient systems. The luminous energy beings dissipated themselves, powering failing systems. But none stopped. None retreated. And then, impossibly miraculously, it worked. The entropy engine, designed by a long-dead race to end a universe they couldn't control, shut down. Stars that had been wound into its mechanism broke free. The acceleration of entropy reversed. Reality itself exhaled in relief. Of the 3,000 ships that had entered the quantum fragmentation, only 400 were formed intact. The rest were lost between possibilities, their crews sacrificed to probability. Captain Vasquez was among the survivors, though her hair had turned completely white, and she could sometimes see echoes of the realities where she had died. The galaxy mourned its losses, not just humans this time, but heroes from every known species. They had learned humanity's lesson too well, perhaps. They had learned to be idiots who ran toward danger. But they had also learned something greater. In the aftermath, as the Allied fleet limped home, a message was broadcast from the shutdown engine. It was from the race that had built it, a final recording triggered by the shutdown. "We were the architects," the translation read. "We sought perfection through control. When the universe would not conform to our designs, we chose to end it rather than accept imperfection. We failed because we could not do what you have done. Unite imperfect beings in a perfect cause. You are our successors not through technology, but through will. The universe is yours. Use it better than we did." The memorial built for the fallen this time wasn't just for humans. It stood on a station at the crossroads of the galaxy, where beings from all species could come to remember. The inscription, written in every known language, was simple. "Here lie those who looked at the end of everything and said, 'Not today.' There were many species, but one people. They were mortals who defied infinity. They were the galaxy's children who became its saviors." Earth received a new designation from the Galactic Council, not as a protector species, but as something unprecedented. They were named teachers, the ones who had shown the galaxy that courage was contagious, that hope could be learned, that the impossible was just another word for not yet. And in the vast reaches of space, when new threats emerged, and they always would, the galaxy no longer looked to any single species for salvation. They looked to each other, united by a simple human truth. When everyone else says it's impossible, someone has to say, "We'll handle it." And now, finally, everyone would.